As I started doing research about you, I really said, okay, this is someone I got to interview. Even though I've never heard about you personally, I've heard about your work.
It actually makes me really happy. No, the fact that you knew about the church, but you didn't know about me, because really the church should never be about a person.
It's true. That's true. And you grew up in El Salvador.
I was born there, and I went back and forth till I was around 10 years old.
So you're 10 years old. You were a filmmaker as well, right? You got into film, a lot of things, fashion.
Which means I couldn't hold a job.
Exactly. Same here. Same here. But I love your fashion, man. You walked in here, I was like, I need you to style me. You know, I wear the same black shirt every day.
So this is really good. Lewis is an SCTI guy, so he's, paying attention to the sensory here. So in this interview, we can kind of see like how they're the same, how they're different.
I think is the reason we're all here.
Well, I know this is the school of greatness. I actually do believe that there's greatness inside of every single person. I think that every human being is created in the image of God, and that and because that every human being has intrinsic value, and that we're created to create. I read a book years ago called The Artisan Soul, and it's an anthropology. And what I argue in that book is what makes humans different than every other species is that we can actually materialize the invisible. There's no other species that can imagine a reality that does not exist and create it. And we don't even realize it's what humans do, because silkworms just create silk. They don't wake up in the morning and decide what they're going to do. Honeybees just create honey. It's just intrinsic to who they are. And I think that humans create futures. And that we're intrinsically created to create the good and the beautiful and the true. And I look at it, I think human ideals are the best evidence of this. Like for me, one of the best evidences of God are human ideals. Because there's this phenomenon called phantom pain, where if you lose an arm, you feel the pain of the arm for years and years and years. And you have the psychological memory, not of that arm, but that arm is still there. But you cannot have phantom pain if you don't lose something that wasn't once there. If it wasn't there, you cannot have phantom pain. And so every time you do a school of greatness, you're actually experiencing phantom pain. You're saying there's something inside of you that there's no physical evidence of, but I believe it's there. We have to pull it out of you. You have to awaken it.
So the first time I watched this guy, like after 15 minutes, I was like, oh my God. I was like done. Because he actually really reminds me of Robert Downey Jr. because he kind of has this cadence of maybe like an ENTP or like a Tony Stark kind of guy. But then he opens his mouth and what comes out is just like, this like NF. Like, I don't know what he's talking about. And he's just blasting. He's just going.
Because if humans are at their core longing to be fully alive, what I know is that you feel most fully alive when you're most fully loved.
That's the truth.
And if you have all the success that the world measures, and you feel as if you've not found someone to love and someone to love you, you'll feel as if your life is a failure.
He's like talking about love. He just keeps going back to love. Every time he opens his mouth, it somehow ends up going back to love. And Lewis is just, wow.
Wow. So now wrap it all back to this little statement that Jesus says that God is love. And so I think that a lot of us aren't searching for God, we're searching for love, and we crash into God.
Say it one more time.
So we're not searching for God, we're searching for love. But while we're searching for love, we crash into God.
Wow.
So Lewis can't keep up. That is so good. So he's going on this like NF tangent, when we're looking for God, we steer this way, whatever he's talking about. He lost Lewis. Lewis doesn't know what he's talking about. He's up here in La La Land. He's using so much, NF and basically in analogy land that Lewis is not, he's leaving behind Lewis. Is this a Sonia Sotomayor who's going to be very like S, going step by step and grounded, you always know what she's talking about? No. Lewis doesn't know what he's talking about. So he's like, you literally spaced out. He was like, I'm sorry, I need you to repeat that because I wasn't listening because you're not making sense. You're in N land.
Sorry, this excites me.
No.
Yeah, when
a little bit, because Lewis is, an ST guy, SCTI, But what's so great about Lewis is he does his demons. So his whole thing was about discovering the NF and, pulling those up to the light. So you almost get like this uncomfortableness from him, but it's good. This is his kind of like growth zone. So it's just in contrast to this guy a little bit, I think.
In love, everything gets heightened.
Yeah.
And I think this is what it means like, to be alive. Because one time this secular journalist asked me, what does it feel like to believe in God? I go, have you ever had that moment in your life where like the food tastes better and the aromas are more clear and distinct and the colors are just brighter? And I remember when I was driving when I was younger and I didn't know I needed glasses. But my friend and I were playing this game where you do this alphabet thing. Oh. You have to find the letter A, B, C in words. And he kept winning, and I thought he was cheating. And then as we were driving, he goes, wait a minute. Okay, tell me as soon as you can read that sign. And he could read it way before me. That's how I only discovered I needed glasses. I only discovered I couldn't see clearly when I was with someone who could see clearly. Mm. And the first time I put on glasses, I realized leaves were distinct individual pieces on a tree.
Not just blurs, like shadows, yeah.
I always thought they were beautiful.
See, now that he's relating his analogies to something that's real, Lewis can keep up with him. So he's like, oh, yeah, you mean when your vision is poor and then you put on glasses, like, he's relating it to something real, so now Lewis is with him. But when he was, like, in N-land, Lewis was like, I'm sorry, repeat that, I wasn't paying attention. He was totally leaving him behind. But now this is something he can censor, keep up with.
I didn't know that they were astonishing. And one time we were in New York years and years ago. We went up to Eastchester, and we were going back to Manhattan. And when we got into the taxi, I didn't have a lot of money or anything like that, and I realized I left my wallet. My son said, Dad, I got you covered. He was like being a man,
The missing sensor left the wallet.
I got you covered. You don't need to get your wallet. My wife was going to bring it later. So we took this taxi to Manhattan. He paid for the taxi, and then he left his wallet in the taxi.
Oh, man.
His son left his wallet, too.
We're in Manhattan, like 1 a.m, and with no money, no ID, no credit cards, no phones.
It actually reminds me of Dave Grohl, NEFI guy. He got into some trouble because he left his wallet on a gas station thing. The missing SI.
And if you can't let go of the fear and let go of the anxiety and let go of the stress, you can't access the part of your brain that unleashes imagination and creativity. So as we walked for this hour, we spent the time talking about how to solve problems. Like who do you know anywhere in the country that could help us? Who do you know? What are the unforeseen materials that we have of human relationships?
The resources
that we have. What can't you see? What can't you see?
We both lost our wallets, but let's just go in NF land for an hour while we're walking around New York.
It's funny, as we're walking, he goes, is there really such a thing as a reptilian brain? He goes, because I'm going to use this, and I want to make sure you're not just making this up.
Is your NF real?
And, but I think there's this kind of dynamic when a person is under duress. The part of, I don't even want to use brain, the part of your essence that you activate is the part that leaves you paralyzed. And if you can actually step away from that fear and that anxiety and begin to see that there's wonder and beauty and opportunity all around, it begins to activate the part of your brain that's full of imagination and creativity.
He keeps coming back to stuff like unlocking imagination, creativity. He's kind of saying any keywords, but you can't really... I'm not putting all my eggs in that basket right now. I don't think that proves anything.
Imagine a world inside of me that I felt was safer than the world outside of me. And I created a world inside of me that was much more interesting, and a world that I fit in better. And I felt like I was having a hard time coming out. And I could
of that world,
yeah. And stepping back out. So I would go to school, and I would disappear, and the class would be gone. The teacher would just give up on getting my attention. And
because you were in another world.
I was just literally in another world. And every year I'd go to school and go, this is the year I'm going to make A's. This is the year I'm going to do well. And by the third or fourth day, I couldn't remember my classes. I just really couldn't connect to the outside world. And
So he's like, I was in my head so much, I didn't even know what my classes were. My teacher stopped trying to get me to pay attention. Like, when I heard that, I thought that was kind of crazy because when I was going through school, I loved to, like, make a schedule and, like, know about all my classes and, like, okay, where am I going? And I have this, and let me get my folder. He's like, no, I couldn't even remember what my classes were because I was just in my head in imagination land.
And I think it's part of what drives us almost to madness, too. Because I have thought things were meaningful that were not.
Like what?
You know?
Lewis is like what? Give me an example. Give me a sensor example.
When you're young, right? I mean, I played sports, right? You know, and I'm from El Salvador. I should have been playing soccer, but my stepdad insisted I play football. You know, I'm not physically really creative for football, but I thought football was the most meaningful thing in my life.
Yeah.
And when I stopped playing football, my mom actually called the college to make sure I was not so depressed that I wouldn't do something harmful, because it was the most meaningful thing in my life.
Right.
And I mean, I broke a bunch of bones in the back of my hand. I played 4 more games while those bones broke without going to the doctor.
I've done the same thing.
You did what now? You played 4 more games with a broken hand. Point for sleep last. Like, okay, first of all, this is not the most introverted guy in the world, in my opinion. So the introverts are blast last or play last. Is this blast last? I don't think so. Is this play last? I don't think so. So if he's an extrovert, he's going to be consume last or sleep last. I think, you know, if this were Lisa Bilyeu, who has sleep, you know, higher, forget what it is, first or second, but she'd be like, oh, my hand is hurting. I have to, you know, wrap it up, bandages on the hand. He's like, no, I broke 4 of my bones and I kept playing. So point for sleep last.
By the way, when I wrote the book, it's crazy. I was driving down Hollywood, down Vine, and I was with my wife, and I heard this. I have a vivid imagination. I heard this voice, and I heard this, the first line of the book. It was, the warrior's not ready for battle until they've come to know peace.
Ooh.
This is the way of the warrior. And I looked over at my wife and said, I have my next book.
What? He was just driving, and then this line came to him, and he's like, I have a new book. Like, is this consuming a lot to come up with something? I don't, like, this is not a writer who's taking 4 years to consume things and then producing a book. This is like, a line came to me while I was driving around, and I made an entire book from that one line. So now we got Lewis Howes, 3 truths. Let's see what he says here.
Write down 3 things you know to be true from your whole life experience. From all the crazy worlds you were living in, all the questioning, all the experience and the lessons, you get to write down 3 final lessons or truths that you would share with the world. What would you say are your 3 truths?
I would say that the motive of all things is love. And that people are the only true value that exists in the world. And that when everyone else thinks you're gone, you've just gotten started.
Wow. Interesting. That's a good 3rd one. Okay.
This is like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. This whole interview with Lewis, all he could say is like, wow, interesting. He's like, what the hell, man? So I think the first one was something about love. Second one was something about, you know, people. And the third one was, I don't even know, some end thing. But he keeps coming back to, what I'm seeing is he keeps coming back to like love and then people and love and people. So I think point for F over T, DE. Also observer. You can be an observer and be really cranked up on the DE as well. So let's see what's next here.
Celebrating our 40th wedding anniversary in January.
Oh,
Wow.
congratulations.
Thank you.
Yep, married 4 years. We met when we were in our 20s. We were both getting our master's degrees. And
We both met at seminary, of all places, to meet
Wow.
at seminary.
I'm curious about what the first interaction was and when you guys first locked eyes, you know?
you are a true romantic. Like when you first locked eyes. If you locked eyes with someone the first time you met them, you would be a stalker, Andrew.
So that's great. He's double deciding. Interview with Sean Johnson and Andrew East here. But he's double deciding very well here. He's kind of, taking a shot at Andrew.
My first memory of meeting Kim, I had started
This is good.
a project in downtown Fort Worth for the homeless and for people just living on the streets. And I remember Kim was talking to this guy that was a pretty ruthless guy. He was really violent and very aggressive. And one of the guys came to me and said, "Hey, that young girl, she's talking to the wrong guy." And I knew he wouldn't hurt her. But I said, "It's okay, let her. That she wants to come out here. She needs to know what the streets are really
Just
like."
let her.
And so they had a pretty intense conversation. It didn't go well. She comes up to me. I'm tuning my guitar. And she goes, "Can we talk?" And I look at this girl and I go, yeah, just give me a minute. I got to get ready. And then she goes, "Can we talk right now?" I said, "Yeah, just 1 minute." She turned around and started walking away. And I saw.
Wait, so you saw that she was getting into an intense conversation with this homeless guy, and you're tuning your guitar, and then she comes up. She came up to him. She was like, "Can we talk?" And he was like tuning his guitar, and he's like, "Oh yeah, give me a minute." Like he couldn't talk to her right then.
She began sobbing. So I chased her. I put my guitar down. I chased her down the street. She's just crying out of control. And I said, "Don't cry. Don't cry." And she said, "I want to cry." And I said,
I want to cry.
"Okay, cry." Cry.
So she seems a little more maybe TEFI, maybe masculine DE. So then if she's, feeling hurt and sensitive, she's might be lashing out a little bit with masculine TE or something like that. This is just a guess. But that's just funny to me. I want to cry.
That's my first conversation with Kim. And so I always say I met Kim on the streets.
I only heard he chased me.
You guys are great. I was so excited for this.
Andrew kills me. I was so excited for this. He's like, "I will consume for me." Sean, love Sean. She seems a little bit more introverted. She didn't talk too much during this interview. Maybe consume play. SCFI. Just taking a stab in the dark here.
Really, for us, the beginning of it was we were just friends, and we did a lot of things together. We played racquetball together. Mm-hmm. She had a terrible temper, and she'd lose a point and smash the racket against the wall. And then I'd let up, and she goes, "Don't you let me." And she'd get angry if I let up. And then if I won the point, she'd get angry because she lost the point. And so our first date kind of together, we fought on the racquetball court. And after about 30 minutes, I looked at her and I said, "Hey, when you learn how to play like an adult, give me a call."
So he's double deciding again, kind of taking a shot at her, like when you learn how to play like an adult. But also, he's not viewing the tribe as masculine, in my opinion. He's kind of viewing the tribe more as feminine, movable, not afraid to take shots at them.
How far into your guys' dating lives or marriage did you end up in your respective fields?
Well, we still don't know what my respective field is.
He knows he's a chaos monkey. He's double deciding, and he knows that he's OE. He's like, "Oh, I know I got a million things going on."
And she's always wondering what I'm doing this year.
Yeah, that's true.
I think I had a lot of ideas Kim didn't agree with. A lot of ideas that Kim thought were crazy and would never work. But she has always really consistently trusted me as a person. And that's what makes our marriage work. When I started bringing art and dance and film and, sketch comedy into our experiences on Sunday, that wasn't something Kim was excited about. She felt at first it was really sacrilegious. And
so he wanted to bring all this stuff into the church, his OE chaos monkey stuff. And she's like, no.
Like I would say to Kim, "This is what I'm here. This is what I see in the scriptures." And she would say, please don't tell anyone.
That's hilarious to me. She knows he's so just a disruptor. He kind of reminds me of like ENFP guys, the ENFP Airbnb guy who's like, oh yeah, I'm a disruptor. I'm just disrupting everything. And she's, if we are going on the assumption that couples have opposite parts, opposites attract, she would be playing the role of an opposite of him. So he'd be, a disruptor. This is what I'm seeing. And she's like, no.
And I said, no, Christianity's wrong. They've been reading the Bible wrong. This is not what this passage says. It says the opposite. And Kim would just, please don't say that outside of the house. And I love the scriptures, and I believe in the Bible so profoundly that I think it's a terrible thing when we believe what we've been taught rather than what it says. And so I feel this deep conviction to rip through our comfortable conclusions to truth.
Sounds like he's kind of talking about some DI stuff. But what I'm seeing is he's kind of balanced with the DE and the DI. And so he's like, yeah, we have the people, but then we also have my convictions. So another point for observer, I guess, because he's able to double decide well, T and F in the middle there. Whether that's, I guess I kind of am seeing FETI just because he's so much more like emotions extrovertedly. And then he's kind of saying something about truth here, like my inner truth. Maybe point for TI, I'm not really sure.
And that would create so much dissonance in our home. Early on in church life, we would have business meetings, and Kim would stand up and oppose me in the business meetings.
Yeah.
It's funny for him, but she doesn't really want to talk about it.
That Kim was going to act out of conviction in her life. And so those are conversations that we had to have as a couple, and so that we could be on the same page when we walk out in public.
Oh, so now the strategy is anytime there's disagreement, you do it with just you two and not in the boardroom. Is that right?
You also know what you're going to disagree about.
Yeah. You
do know what you're going to disagree about.
The missing information. It's fine if we argue with each other and we don't agree because, if he is an observer, that would be more okay for him. And especially if he's, feminine, extroverted decider, it would be, disagreeing in public is not that big of a deal. But the missing information, we better know what we're going to disagree on.
You know when you're going to do something and it's going to create tension. It's going to create conflict or confusion. One funny story is that about 10 years ago, I decided for the first time to go in the fashion industry, in the film industry, start a business, and I didn't even know if I was going to stay pastoring. And I went and got Kim. We went and got breakfast and had coffee, and I said, "Honey, I'm going to pivot in the next 20 years of my life. I'm going to be an artist, and I just want to, let you know and make sure it's okay and help, and."
Wait, hold on. You took your wife to breakfast and you said, honey, for the next 20 years, I'm going to completely change my career. What?
I'm going to, go in, start designing clothes and bags and make films and create art. And I'm still going to follow Jesus, but I'm not going to do it in the same, in the same way. And she said, sure, go right ahead. She was so incredibly supportive.
So if we're following the theory that they are opposites, if he's, coming with some OE chaos monkey stuff like, hey, by the way, for the next 20 years, I'm going to do something completely different. If they are opposites, she would, her reaction, you would think, would be to be like, oh my God, here we go again. Like, no, please. But then let's see what happens.
It was like the most beautiful moment. And then a year later, she says, hey, we need to talk. And I said, oh, sure, but about what? She goes, it seems like you've suddenly gone off and become this like fashion designer and film guy, and what about ministry? What about the church? And she goes, you need to talk to me about where you're going, where we're going. And I said, honey, we did have that talk a year ago. And she said, that talk didn't count because I didn't believe you could do it.
she's like, yeah, we had the lunch, but you're such a chaos monkey. I didn't think that you were actually going to like follow through with that stuff. I didn't think you were going to do it because you're all over the place. That just cracks me up. Because the first time I watched that, I was like, okay, but if they are opposites, then she, normally would have a reaction like, but he said that she was super supportive. It's because she didn't take him seriously. She's like, yeah, here he goes again.
Some people move from thinking single to married faster than other people. And I find a lot of times men, when they get married, are still thinking like a single guy who's now married. And the wife is thinking like a married person who used to be single and has to make individual choices. And so in your marriage, you still have to make individual choices.
So what he's talking about is kind of the mindset of single versus married. And what this reminded me of was Robert Pattinson, lead FE guy, where you almost kind of can't see that he's FE, and then you see that he's tracking relationships so well, where he's, doing an interview about Twilight, and he's like, yeah, teenage relationships are just like dark and brooding, and then you catch him because you're like, oh, you're tracking that? You're tracking relationships extrovertedly? That's what I kind of see Erwin doing here, is he's like, well, the way couples think, like, this is why people keep coming back to him for the relationship advice, is because they can see he's tracking this stuff.
Book a trip to Malawi and forget to tell me. Like, I will see it at the office on a calendar. Oh, she's leaving on Tuesday. It's good to know. But when she used to do that, I would get angry. But not because I was really angry, but because, you're playing the chips game. And, so now if I do a stupid thing, or if I plan a trip without telling you, you can't get angry at me. And I realized a long time ago, oh, if I get angry, she's still going, but now she goes and she's sad. Yeah. And we're angry and we're not together. And
the emotions are extroverted. The emotions are not so personal. He's tracking what goes on in relationships, what goes on in other people's relationships, what goes on in his relationship.
So now it still happens now, and she'll plan a trip, and then I'll just go, I'm so happy for you. I just want to know so that I can plan my life too. And what's crazy is, like, my schedule is insane. If Kim wanted to live holding things over me, she could do it every 5 minutes of my life, because she may plan that trip to Africa and forget to let me know. But I have stuff all the time that's messing up our life.
I just keep seeing Observer. He's taking shots at himself. Yeah, I mess up our lives. And he can, him and his wife can see that he's OE, basically. Yeah, I'm a total chaos monkey.
We've been married for 40 years because Kim is awesome. And we have this beautiful relationship, and we keep growing. And you can experience a level of love when you fight through the hard things with someone.
I'm kind of noticing now, it seems like this is a little more personal for her. She's kind of like, oh, I'm a little uncomfortable. I don't really want to talk about the details of our relationship like that. Like, it's kind of FI, basically, more introverted feeling. And then he's just like, oh yeah, I'll just lay it all out there.
The reason marriages are hard is because human beings are imperfect. The reason it's hard for our marriage to work is because I'm imperfect, and I'm not going to speak on Kim's behalf.
So Observer, I'm imperfect, everybody's imperfect, but then also DE here.
If you always tap out when life gets hard, you actually never grow. You stay the same person. And so I think it's not just about people are willing to stay married. I don't think people are willing to grow and change.
Growth mindset stuff.
All I know is I love Erwin, and he's my best friend. And that friendship has gotten us through. I want that for other people, the people that we love. I can't make it happen.
I think this is such a good example of FITE. Because he's talking about the emotions more extrovertedly, and he's not obligated to make anything work. And then she's like, she doesn't really talk about the emotions and their relationship that much, but she's more just like, I love Erwin. He's in her FI box. All I know is I love him, and I want to make that work for other people, kind of TE language. So if they are opposites, that would be another point for him being FETI, her being TEFI, but can't prove anything.
Can you use a synonym for love deeply? Like, what is that? Say it differently for me. I'm curious.
Care about the other person more than you care about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that to me, that's what loving deeply is, and it's valuing the other person more than you. And
DE stuff.
I'm not happy because Kim makes me happy. I actually experience happiness because I make Kim happy. Like when Kim is happy, I experience a deep, deep level of joy. Like when Kim is fulfilled, I feel a deep sense of fulfillment. And you know, so
he's tearing up. He's getting very emotional about this, and I think it's very DE, but it's also feelings. So I don't know. It's giving a lot of points for FE right now, just because, you know, it's the emotions are more extroverted. Oh, when I see her happy, then I'm happy. It's not like someone else is making me happy for me. It's more of an extroverted thing.
One of the questions
this interview is really good. I love this one. I watched this so many times. I really think you could get most of his parts from this interview alone, or a lot of them. So basically the background of this is, I was reading his Wikipedia, and, you know, he has so many things going on, all this stuff, you know, film and fashion, and, you know, of course the church he started, that was his main thing. I did see on his Wikipedia that his film studio, like McManus Studios, closed. And like investors pulled out. So I was like, what is that about? And I was like, it was actually hard to find information. Like I couldn't find a lot of information about it, because I was like, why did his studio fail? And I actually found out his partner embezzled money from him. And then the studio went under, but let's see what he has to say about it.
Asked a lot is, what did you learn from your biggest failures? And before I dive into that, I just want to say that one of the things you want to develop in your life is the ability to learn not just from your failures, but from your successes. Usually the reason we learn from our failures is that it's the only time we become open to learning.
So he's going in to talk about why his film studio failed, but not without a blaster lesson first. He can't talk about it without doing a blaster lesson.
What happens when we're succeeding is that we become, overconfident. We actually maybe even become arrogant, and we start overlooking the details and ignoring the process. And it was probably 10 years ago, I experienced my most significant financial failure. I had a company that was called McManus Studios, and inside of the studios, we had a fashion company and a film company and a tech company, and we did some publishing as well, and it was thriving. In fact, one of our fashion companies won the Eco Domani Award for Fashion in the first year or so, and our film company created the #1 rated commercial for the Super Bowl rated by Ad Rate. And so we had really incredible success. We were thriving. We were financially liquid. And I remember on our last economic forecast, I was able to show our business partner that we were thriving and didn't need any more investment. They were actually already moving with so much economic momentum that we were good to go. And then I woke up one day and it was all gone. My business partner made a decision that cost me the entire company. And that day, somewhere between $6 to $10 million of valuation was gone. And not only that, but just before that, I had taken all my profits and put it back into the company to try to reinvest in our own business. And that was gone. And I remember flying home from Dallas at that time to my home in Los Angeles, having to tell my wife that I lost everything. And that journey was a really challenging journey. It didn't get fixed overnight. It took me 5 years to dig or work my way out of the consequences of that failure. And I think if I were to pull out some significant learning lessons, these are the ones that come to mind. The first one is choose who you work with really carefully.
So yeah, he's going to go into some blaster lessons here, but I think what's really interesting is he doesn't even say the name of this guy who screwed him over once. And I can't even find it online. And I did read an article that the money was embezzled, and then he doesn't really I don't know the whole story. Maybe the situation is actually different, but he doesn't really talk about it like that. Like, he's not making it a personal thing between him and this guy. Like, if this was Barbara Corcoran and EJ, she'd be calling that person out. It'd be number one enemy. Oh, I'm gonna, come up and show that person that, I'm better than that or better than them. I can overcome this, whatever. He's not even saying their name. It's that guy, as far as he's concerned, doesn't even matter. So huge point for observer, in my opinion.
You want to make sure that you have people who are not just committed to the business, but are committed to each other. And by the way, that's even true when you're doing well, because if you're in business and you're succeeding with people you do not enjoy and do not trust and do not have a really significant relationship with, it won't be as much fun. It won't be enjoyable. It is so much better to do life with friends. It is so much better to do business with people you love and to do business with people you enjoy.
People, relationships.
Business with people you want to do life with. And so that, to me, that's my first lesson, is success is so rare and failure is so common that you want to succeed and fail with people that you care about. You want to succeed and fail with people that have your back, whether you succeed or fail. And so, to me, the beginning of the journey, the thing I learned the most is it's all about people.
Can't make this stuff up. DE, all about people.
When you lose that kind of money in one day and you have to wake up the next morning, and believe me, I did not want to wake up the next morning, you have to begin to problem solve.
And it's not really about the guy. He immediately goes to the things, how can I problem solve? Also, I was thinking about this more, and if his business partner was embezzling from him, I bet that there were some sensor signs that was happening, and he just wasn't looking there. So maybe there were like some statements that were sketchy, or, some problems in the company before his business partner stole money from him, I guess. The sensor caught him is what this seems like. I just keep seeing stuff that the biggest problem in his life isn't really identity and people. Like, he talks about people a lot, but I am seeing that he keeps getting caught on the censor stuff. Missing the wallet, didn't look at the, statements, and then somebody stole money from me.
If I could encourage anyone, is no matter how bleak or how dark or how difficult or how overwhelming a situation may be, you can actually work your way out of it. It just doesn't happen fast. It took me 5 years to pay off all the debt from that business disaster.
By the way, also on his Wikipedia, it says that he went into debt to pay back people's salaries who worked for the company. So just really great guy. Like, he didn't screw anybody over. He took out of his own wallet to make it up to people. Another point for DE.
And it took me 5 years to make myself whole again economically, or just get back to zero. So now let's go back and apply this in a practical way. How do you start now? If it's all about people, choose your inner circle carefully. Look at the people in your life right now.
People.
Are they the kind of people you want to become? Are they going where you want to go? And then finally, do an assessment, a personal assessment. I think sometimes when we look around, we assess, what we have. Do I have a car? Do I have an apartment? Do I have a house? Do I have clothes? Do I have money in the bank? Do I have this or that? And we're doing an external assessment. Do an internal assessment.
So he's kind of talking about looking extrovertedly, so maybe OE, DE, some combination of that. But then right now he's doing a blaster lesson about sleep processing.
Take some time and take a blank sheet of paper and a pen and start writing down everything you've learned. Do an internal assessment. This is how I'm growing. This is where I've grown. This is what I've been through. This is what I've come to know. And begin to do a personal audit so that you can realize that you actually have changed, that you are growing, and that you have a lot to contribute. Remind yourself what you've been through. Remind yourself what you've overcome. Remind yourself of who you are. And begin to build your confidence. Not based on some abstract, I'm going to be confident because I believe something good is going to happen to me. Build your confidence based on, this is who I've become. This is what I've been through. This is what I've been able to learn from.
The sleep processing.
Your confidence will come from your internal world. And as you grow as a person, you need to make sure that you are paying attention to who you're becoming. And by the way, you might surprise yourself. You might want to sit down and write a top 10. I know it's crazy. You can't show it to your friends. But
point for sleep last. He's like, it's crazy. You can't show it to your friends. I mean, he could have been joking in that case, but the fact that the sleep processing would be something crazy and something to do a blaster lesson about. Point for sleep last.
And is it possible these longings?
This is so good. So if you look at this, like, because when I was first watching him, I was like, wait, is this some SC guy? But then all that was coming out of his mouth was like Robert Downey Jr. NF stuff. And then I found old interviews and he looks like that. I couldn't believe how NF he looks.
Intimacy is we all long for intimacy, perhaps more than anything else, and yet we all fear intimacy, probably more than anything else.
Look at this NF. The pastor vest, the hair.
Longings, these desires, these cravings are actually our soul searching for God. I mean, when I was 12 years old, I was in a psychiatric chair, and I was in and out of a hospital because I was a pretty broken, damaged human being. And what I think is interesting about all of us is that we are so desperate for some things, we'll even damage ourselves to try to get them, and love is one of them. You know, the thing with intimacy is we all long for intimacy, perhaps more than anything else, and yet we all fear intimacy, probably more than anything else.
People, even, 20, 30 years ago, people were going to him for the relationship advice, and it's the same stuff he's talking about. He just looks different now. And I think that's one thing you got to keep in mind when you're typing these kind of people is like, what are his saviors and what's a discovery? Like, what's a demon? So I think for him, I've been kind of getting tripped up on like, maybe the NF stuff is actually a discovery for him. But then I see that in these old interviews, he's still talking about the same stuff, and he, I guess, looks so much more NF that I was kind of thinking like, well, did he just figure out the sensory stuff over time? Like the sensor, the clothes and the fashion came later in life. Was the S a discovery? Another NF look here. This interview is kind of goofy.
For a long time, people try to understand what motivates us, what makes us do what we do. And I think the more we understand what moves us, what motivates us, what fuels us, the better we can make the kind of decisions that give us a healthier life, that allow us to create the kind of future that we want to live.
I think people are walking around going, if I just knew what motivated me.
Now, I think a lot of people are like pregnant women. You just wake up and go, I need asparagus with chocolate covered with ice cream and peanut butter. Get it now. You don't realize what's going on here is that your body has certain needs. It needs certain vitamins and nutrients. And so as this life is forming inside of you, it's screaming out through cravings what it needs to feed this life.
It kind of reminds me of Jay-Z, where it's like, okay, this is N. The analogies are not always, sometimes they're kind of cringy. Sometimes the analogies are kind of awkward. But they're like, yeah, I'm gonna and shove that into an analogy anyway. So in this case, it's like, your soul is like a pregnant woman. What?
My wife asked me, honey, why do you love me? And I said, no good reason. And
poor wife.
You mean there's no reason to love me? I said, no. What I meant was that I don't love you for a reason. I love you because it's impossible for me not to love you.
Just abusing his wife with the NF.
The future is literally not in your hands, it's in your soul. The future humanity desperately needs exists in the imagination of a child right now.
Didn't Einstein talk about imagination? He had a famous quote about imagination.
It's more important than knowledge. Yeah. And imagination is intelligence at play. Right? And I think this is...
Yeah, I'm not really sold that the NF is a discovery. I think even though in his later years he looks kind of maybe like an SCTI guy maybe, but then his saviors, that he's been riding on for like 30 years, seem to be kind of NF. Like every time he opens his mouth, it's mostly NF stuff. But then I was seeing that he can flip back between the T and F a little bit. Like, I don't think this is demon T. Well, I'm not sure.
Exactly right. That imagination is the true iteration of human intelligence.
Interesting.
Without imagination, intelligence is just data.
Yeah.
It's imagination that translates knowledge into genius.
Yes.
When you feel like you've lost faith in God, you need to realize what you've actually lost is faith in humanity. Because, Louis, if there is no God, then what has caused your disillusionment? People.
This is so funny to me. You cannot make this stuff up. He could have answered anything. If you were to ask someone, what makes someone lose their faith in humanity, disillusionment with God, people could say anything. They could say, something internal or, some N things or some S things. What does he go to? People. Look at this DE face.
Because love is unseen. If God's transcendent, love is certainly transcendent.
Yes.
So even if there's no God, we do believe in transcendent things. And I believe in love even when I've been betrayed by what I thought was love. I believe in love even when love seemed to have died.
Louis is the same as me. Like, what is going on?
I believe in love even when my love was inadequate. I've loved people and then I stopped loving them. Are you willing to admit that?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
See, what does it say about me? That I've loved people and I thought it was all the love I had. And then I didn't. I mean, I went through a time of mourning, but eventually it was a memory. Barely even a memory.
Right.
Seems kind of more extroverted feelings like, oh yeah, I love people, but then I stopped loving them. It's not really personal. I went through mourning. Now I'm okay.
There are a lot of atheists I know from TED and other places that say, well, religion is the cause of all human evil. I'm going, wait a minute, how's that possible? See, because, again, if there's no God, then religion is just a human construct. Just like government. Just like education. So within every human construct is the source of human evil.
Whoa. I feel like this really catches him because it's a single observation. So he's going, okay, well, if religion is a human construct and you're saying religion is evil, then all human constructs are evil. The single observations, all the things are bad. And, the person who he's talking to might be like, no, that's not what I was saying. But this is when I caught him making a single observation. I would be pretty surprised if this was a decider. I think this is either a decider who's learned how to double decide, but I am guessing that this is an observer.
Yeah. When people say, I need to know who I am, I don't need to know who I am, because who I am is fluid. I want to know who I'm becoming.
Yeah.
I was driving to San Diego one day, and my wife called me, and she goes, hey, where are you? And I said, I can't tell you where I am. I can tell you where I've been. I can tell you where I'm going, but because I'm in motion, where I am isn't a reality.
He's just NF abusive to the wife. She's like, hey, where are you? And he's like, I'm nowhere.
She's like, just tell me the answer.
That's exactly what she said.
Just tell me where. You're in the road?
She goes, just shut up and tell me where you are.
Don't be a philosopher right now.
Yeah. And I said, I'm on the 5.
I'm on the 5.
I mean, I believe in God, and obviously I believe in Jesus, but I question it every day, and I press it every day, and I don't allow myself the space to just go, I just believe because I believe, and I think that's the way I'm designed. But if I move into a negative in that, I can just become an anarchist where I'm just trying to destroy everything, and leave nothing standing.
Tear it all down.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, I can prove everyone is wrong, but there's nothing that's right. So I'm not making the world better. And so you have to really look at that shadow and go, okay, am I trying to help everyone move toward a better truth, a more beautiful truth? Or am I just trying to prove that everyone's wrong and that I'm wrong too? And even when I was searching for God, I was okay if there was no God. Like I was on this search and I was like, hey, if there's no God, I'm good with it. I just want to kind of come to some conclusion for myself, not for anyone else in the world. And when I met people who believed in God, I would argue with them that there was no God. And I would find some level of satisfaction destroying their view of God.
I thought this was really interesting. You did what? You argued with people for fun?
And when people were atheists and did not believe in God, I would argue for God. And I had to come to this realization of, I don't really care. I just love the argument.
Sure.
But I think some of it was, I wanted someone to win the argument so that I could have some level of peace in my life.
What is that? I don't like to argue. Is that a TI thing? He's like, at that point in his life, he didn't, believe in God. He wasn't religious. But he's like, I like to argue. He would be a devil's advocate. I think that it goes again kind of towards disruptor. Like he just wanted to disrupt. He just wanted to argue with people.
I was hoping someone would convince me that there was a God. Or hoping someone would convince me there wasn't a God so I could just
stop arguing. Yeah.
Because the argument was really with me.
Right.
And
interesting.
And I think that's the dilemma of the Maven frequency. But the upside of the Maven frequency is that you're always pressing people toward the new, the unexpected, the innovative. And the idea of the book, when you write a book, you don't really know when you start it, right? The idea kind of is there for a while.
Yeah.
But I know exactly when this book started.
When?
October 26, 1990. That's a long time ago.
Wow.
33 years ago. On October
Masculine sensory?
26, 1990, I was listening to sports radio driving through Dallas, Texas. And the day before, on October 25th, Buster Douglas defended his title against Evander Holyfield. 8 months earlier, on February 11th, in Tokyo, Japan, Buster Douglas knocked out Mike Tyson in the 10th round.
8 months earlier.
He has 8 months to train to prepare to defend his title. He comes to that fight overweight, out of shape, unprepared.
Gets knocked out, doesn't he?
I think the third round, right?
Yeah.
He
looks
terrible.
Sloppy.
Yeah.
Lewis is loving it. The censor.
So the
He
next,
was living that champ life. He was like, he's from my hometown, so Columbus, Ohio.
okay.
Yeah.
So sports radio, they're talking about Buster, and one guy said,
Before the fight or after?
after the fight.
Okay.
They're reflecting on
Yes.
this terrible defense, right?
Really bad.
Yeah.
Lewis
and they
is
said,
into
why do you
it.
think Buster didn't even try? And in that moment, it shifted from Buster Douglas to me. And I went, wait a minute. Am I structured for failure? Do I have the internal structures for failure or the internal structures for success?
Yeah.
Or do I have a combination of those? And my internal structures for failure are warring against my internal structures for success. And that's why sometimes I'm succeeding and then I'm tripping over myself and failing. And am I creating pathways to success and then creating all the roadblocks for failure at the same time? And then what hit me with Buster Douglas is that he actually knew how to handle failure. He had lost, I think, 5 fights before that.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't failure that he didn't know how to handle. It was success he didn't know how to handle.
Right.
Right. Just like, what are you talking about? So what am I seeing here? Okay, so first of all, is this if this is an introvert, this is someone who's play last or blast last. I don't think he's either of those things. I don't think he's an introvert. I think he's an extrovert. I think he's consume last or sleep last. I actually think he's sleep last. So this is play over sleep. And I think this is blast over consume, but let's not rule that out yet. Then I keep seeing OE. Like, this is not someone who's like Ray Romano, who's like doing his show for so long and then someone needs to come in and, he gets the chaos, gets let in. Like, Erwin is the chaos. He's bringing the chaos to other people's lives. I don't think this is OI. I guess this might be lead NI, but I feel like this is OE. And then observer, I guess this could be a lead FE. I would just be very surprised. I think I've seen so many things. The thing that actually convinced me the most was he did an interview with Ben Affleck I didn't put it in here because it's mostly about Ben, but it was like Ben Affleck was being weird about identity and people. And it was like, with like, what do people think about me and my identity? Like, Erwin is not doing any of that stuff. He's pretty settled with his identity. The people are not the scariest thing in the world. So I'm going to put my money on Observer here. He also feels balanced with DI and DE, but like, if you think about Robert Downey Jr., where he's like, oh, there was, should I do this movie? Should I not do this movie? Well, let me check myself. It feels right to me, so I'm going to do it. Erwin seems like he has DI things that he knows he wants, but he's still going to the people. Like, he asked his wife for permission, like, hey, can I change my career for the next 20 years? That seemed like kind of a permission thing. This is not an IP. I'm pretty sure about that. So even without touching, N versus S or F over T, if you just go after these, like extrovert, OE, DE, observer, we have it very narrowed down. So I think he's going to be somewhere over here. And if you watch his sermons, like when he speaks at Mosaic, he's just very dialed up. This is a pretty extroverted person. Like, this is not Tony Robbins. So then you're kind of looking, so this could be S over N in that he's speaking in analogies, 45% of the time, and then 55% of the time he's censor taking you with him. But I just keep seeing he's losing Lewis, he's losing me. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's going into N land. So let's say this is N, and I mean, if you compare him to his wife, she seems more TE than him. So if you say OE, DE, NF, you have him narrowed down to here. And then I guess you can go after the animals. So if you say this is play blast, I think this is play over sleep, but blast over consume. I just see that this is not blast last, but I see that he's always ready to blast. He always has lessons ready to go. He's ready to talk. You very rarely catch him, tripping on his words. And then he's not taking a lot of time to consume things. Like, he's come out with 10 or 14 books or something like that. He's just blasting things out and not necessarily taking a lot in first. I think this is a lot of blast, a lot of play blast. Play blast, sleep consume, or play blast, consume sleep. I think my money would be on the more extroverted here. But, if this is, because at first I was like, oh, he actually couldn't be, it wouldn't be possible for him to be any FI if he was play blast. That's interesting. So let's not go after animals. See, he could be that, but let's go back to here. Does he consume play? I don't think so. I think he's pretty dialed up. I think he's one of these. I would not be surprised if he was like an SE guy who's just figured out his demons. But it kind of seems like his saviors are the NF. I just keep seeing that that's what he's most comfortable with. That's where he's natural. Like, it's not really like a... And he didn't go through an awkward phase with the NF. Like, it wasn't like, oh, let me figure out this NF thing. It was like he came out, in his late 20s, 30s being a pastor with the NF. So I could see it being any one of these. Also, if we don't go after Observer, if we say this is OE, DE, NF, play blast, he could be one of these. So I was kind of, throughout the week, I had kind of narrowed it down to this. But I just keep seeing, like, the interview with Ben Affleck really convinced me, because I was like, oh, this is what a decider is. Like, there's this weirdness with identity and people, and he talks about people a lot, but he doesn't have the weirdness with people necessarily. And I keep seeing that he's taking shots at himself. He's double deciding very well. So I think it's one of these. But again, it's hard. It's a little bit hard for me to see with him what is his savior and what's a discovery, because he has a lot of lessons. I wasn't seeing a super hard hero's journey where he had like a huge dip. Also, I think this is feminine DE and then masculine DI. He did say like, oh, who I am is fluid, but then he also kind of, I think more so in his behavior, you can see that he has things that feel like masculine DI he feels really strongly about. And then he kind of, I'm seeing that he views the tribe as feminine. And then if this was masculine S, if this was masculine sensory, then it would be feminine, feminine N, feminine NE in this case. So it would be a little harder to see. So yeah, could this be audio? But I think this would make sense, because at first I was like, oh, is this just an NEFI guy, just an ENFP, like Robert Downey Jr.? But then I kept seeing that he was like the people, and the extroverted relationships, and the love, and the NF. So now I'm thinking he's this, could be an ENTP that's dialed up on the FE. So I'm really excited to watch class and see what his type actually is. Okay, so what did I get wrong and what did I get right in typing Erwin McManus? I can't believe I got observer and decider so wrong. I was like pretty off on this one. But he was kind of hard. Because I still maintain that he could like take shots at himself, but what I should have believed is like, it's the same as Sonia Sotomayor. Like, when someone tells you who they are, you need to believe them. Because I was seeing that he was so DE, but I was looking for observer and decider in kind of the wrong ways. When I was seeing so much DE, I should have started looking for like, okay, how could this be an EJ? And start looking for those supporting things, because he is weird about identity stuff. So this is his type. FENI, so ENFJ, blast, play, sleep, consume last, visual. I got the sexuals pretty off, but the sexuals are hard. And with him it was harder because of his NE and NI, or the N. What did I get right? I got right FE, which I'm really happy about that, because I've been struggling to see FE. So I was glad I got it this time, but what really helped me, weirdly, was like this tiny bit of information from Robert Pattinson where he's just easily and obviously, like, the relationships are easy and obvious to track. And he's tracking these on an extroverted spectrum. Like, I don't know why, it just makes sense to me, but that was what helped me get FE for Erwin here, is that those type of, like, talking about the love, that was so, you know, just easy and obvious, and then talking about the relationships, and people are going to him for advice. So I'm glad I got FE. What I was off on was, you know, I guessed EP, he's an EJ. So yeah, just believing that he's DE would have been good. So I was guessing over here, but then he was here. Another lesson, kind of same as Sonia Sotomayor, is like, when someone is so dialed up on the blast, consider that they might just be lead blast. And don't necessarily go over how extroverted their behaviors are, because I think I was really looking for behaviors, like, oh, he's, you know, doing all this music, or I'm sorry, fashion and movie, film, studio stuff, and kind of overextended, tiring out self and tribe. So like, he is an extrovert, but that doesn't by default mean that he's lead play. So I really need to get better at differentiating lead blasters versus the lead play. That would be good But now I've seen a few blasters. I feel like I'm getting more data for that column. But yeah, I just was guessing more extroverted when really it's just blast, blast, blast that he was doing. Another big thing to go for in this one is the NI versus NE. So I was seeing that he was narrowing down. Like, I wasn't seeing that he was talking in chapters, like a little bit, but it was more so that I could just see a lot of N, and I couldn't exactly see if it was introverted or extroverted, but I did agree that they said in the class that he would narrow down, and kind of anything that you would throw at him, he would like narrow it down into an NI box. So I should have been looking for that a little bit more, like, is he concluding? Is he finalizing? Is he trying to keep out new information like that and just put it into his same old box? He was kind of doing that. So I should have looked for that a little bit more. I was just like, oh, he has so many things going on. I was kind of looking for behavior over speech patterns. So I really need to look for speech patterns, look at what he's actually saying. But yeah, I can't believe I was so sure that he was an observer. Because I do still think that he has learned how to double decide a little bit and just be a little less weird with people. The big takeaway about this is that he's weird about identity. And I wasn't really looking for that. If I had gone after EJ, I would have been able to see that the identity was a bigger thing for him, like in this clip.
What you've been through. Remind yourself what you've overcome. Remind yourself of who you are. And begin to build your confidence. Not based on some abstract, I'm going to be confident because I believe something good's going to happen to me. Build your confidence based on, this is who I've become. This is what I've been through. This is what I've been able to learn from. Your confidence will come from your internal world. And as you grow as a person, you need to make sure that you are paying attention to who you're becoming.
Yeah, so with that, it's looking through the lens of the DI being a demon, it's so much more clear that that's something he keeps looking for. Because he's how old? And he hasn't figured out identity stuff. I guess I was seeing that he was saying, I have things that I want to go after. And so it felt, DI felt balanced with DI and DE. When in actuality, anyone can have things they want to go after. But it does kind of leak out. There's some more clips. He kind of leaks out that he's searching for identity.
And a huge part of it for me has been this realization that even when people search for God, they're really just trying to search for themselves.
Interesting.
They're trying to find who they are, if their life matters, if they have significance, if their existence has meaning. And so I never deluded myself. I was never really trying to find some abstract reality. I was trying to make sense of me.
I think a lot of us try to do that at times.
Yeah.
Right?
I think that's the search we're all on.
Yeah, if I had stayed open to maybe this is an EJ because he keeps talking about DE stuff, then I would have also been able to look for okay, is he having problems with identity? Whereas I put all my eggs into EP, so I was looking for, is he having problems getting caught on sensory stuff, like SI or NI, stuff like that. The sensory, I was kind of cherry picking because I saw him in one interview, he hit a bag. So I was like, oh, that might be masculine sensory. But I think you shouldn't go after that. You really have to trust the speech patterns. And one thing that he kept running away from was the sensory, because he was so, having so much NF talk and N talk. Basically, the sensory was more movable. So I should have been looking for that instead of anecdotes, because I was just looking at anecdotes oh, he hit a bag, and oh, he's can remember some dates 8 months. I can remember some dates too. I have feminine sensory as well, but there are certain important dates I can remember them and pull those out. It's just not constantly. The way Sonia Sotomayor would tell a story was I had my hand here, and then it was 2:53 p.m. and then I had my hand here. That's the kind of thing you're looking for with masculine sensory. He didn't really have that. He had masculine NI in that he was no, this is what it is. And these are the patterns, and he had an answer for everything. I think that's another thing you have to look for is like, do they have an answer for everything, or are they kind of curious about like, oh, well, I wonder what this could be. Like Erwin just was like, already had an answer for everything. Anything you could ask him, he already had it in his NI box. That's one thing I really didn't get right is he's masculine FE, so masculine DE. I thought he was feminine just because he would kind of like, I don't know, like bully the tribe a little bit. So I thought that was him viewing the tribe as feminine, when in actuality that's just him being masculine DE. He's like comfortable telling people what to do, and things like that. Also, in the ops class, they completely typed him from this Lewis Howes interview. And I think it was so NF and it was so hard to follow that I just kind of like skipped out of there. I didn't really want to like really understand what he was saying because it was just so hard to follow. But they really just took this one interview and studied like what he was actually saying in those. I think I was going a little like SE gather too broad, whereas what I should be doing is trying to focus on like, okay, I know it's like totally analogy NF land, but like what is this person actually trying to say? Because he did talk about a lot of identity stuff that was really hard for him. I just kind of like skipped out of there because I was like, oh, this is so much N. Let me just go look for something else. Yeah, so I thought this was an interesting one, FE-NI. Also, if someone is doubled up on blast, it could be that their consume is low. I did kind of get that right. I was like, this is consumer sleep blast, because I did see that he wasn't necessarily consuming a lot before he was coming out with things. But if someone is doubled up on blast, then their consume is going to be low. So you can start to look for things that might back that up. But I was still seeing that his sleep was lower, but he was saying that you have to do the sleep energy. And like, oh yeah, at some point you have to do this processing. And you know, I have to take time for myself and sleep process this. So I should have been looking for that, and that it wasn't necessarily last because he was kind of talking about it. But that one was a little hard to see. I was kind of thinking throughout the week, like, this doesn't feel any FE. There's something about the any FEs that like, or like any specifically, that has more of like a weird feeling. Just like Imogen Heap, where she's like, let me connect all these data points. A little bit more, yeah, like the intuition extrovertedly feels a little different. I can't exactly quantify how it's different, but it does feel a little different. I just was seeing that he was kind of chaotic and that there was a lot of N. So I was like, okay, I think this is NE. But I shouldn't necessarily look for that. Yeah, again, I just need to focus on the speech patterns and like really break down and try to understand what people are actually saying. Because they're going to give you their type. So yeah, really, really good guy. I really like his messages. He's very positive. That's what I was kind of getting this week, is he's just like this positive guy. The people around him are happy. He's happy. And so it was kind of nice he had a lot of NF blast. But it was kind of nice to listen to him this week and just get those, you know, good, positive, happy vibes. So yeah, this is an ENFJ. A little bit hard to catch with the visual, but this is what they can look like. The bigger head and then kind of the bigger frame. I was kind of like, this doesn't really look, there's something like almost like wafy about the NEs, a little bit more like spindly, and I was kind of like, he looks like an SE guy. But yeah, so I guess I could have taken that into consideration as well. But yeah, big EJ head, that's another data point. EJs kind of can have this bigger head like that. So they had some other pictures, like lead TIs or lead FEs, or I'm sorry, lead TEs or lead FEs will sometimes kind of have this big, you know, just the EJs kind of have this big head sometimes. So yeah, this is a lead FE guy. I really have been trying to get better at spotting FE, so I'm glad that I was able to get that this class. But yeah, really positive guy, really good message. So yeah, I'm excited to see who's up next.